He's the former congressman from Texas, currently running for president of the United States. Please welcome back to Love It or Leave It, the first presidential candidate to say fuck, Beto O'Rourke.
Hey, good to see you. Thank you.
Great to have you back. You were first on this show right when we launched, right when you were launching your long shot bid for the Senate. And I remember someone having to explain to me how to pronounce your name. The most surprising thing was how incredible the reaction was to you because you were willing to take this person on. And so, you know, we're here now 2.5 years later, and I think you're at a phase in your campaign, you know, after the terrible tragedy in El Paso where you've just sort of said, fuck it. And you're going to talk about things you care about, like gun buybacks. One of the reasons I think candidates are cautious and worried about taking positions like that is because they're thinking about the general election, and in part because you're not up with the front runners in the polls. You have a bit more freedom. But do you think those other candidates are wrong to be more cautious? Do you think the positions you've taken on buybacks, on reparations, are dangerous positions for a Democrat to take in a general election?
I don't think they're dangerous. And I do think there's something to the idea of fuck it, which is a phrase I was introduced to by my wife, who, when we were starting out in this race, she reminded me of what it was like to be at the outset of the Senate race. And she said, Beto, no one knew your name or how to pronounce your name. No one thought you had a chance against Ted Cruz. You really had nothing to lose, right? The other word for freedom. And so you just went out there and you went to every county. You said what was on your mind. You never knew if it polled well or not. You were talking about an assault weapons ban in Texas. You were talking about impeachment in 2017 and what everyone thought was a red state. And you just said, fuck it. And you just said what was on your mind. And she, about midway through this campaign, reminded me of that. She says, you got to get back to fuck it. And not fuck it as in who cares, but fuck it as in don't care about the stuff that don't matter. Don't care about the polls or the conventional wisdom or the rhetoric you're supposed to use as a candidate. Just say what you really feel. I think that's what people connect to. And I think nothing forces that more than what we experienced in El Paso on August 3rd. And there was this moment where I remember a reporter had stuck a microphone in my face, TV camera on me, and I was actually looking for Amy. We were trying to get to this vigil, and they were like, do you think the president has anything to do with the fact that a guy who was worried about being replaced as a white man in America, who was railing about invasions, walked in with an AK-47 into a Walmart and just started killing people, gunned down 22? And I was like, what the fuck? Like, how do you not see this? Why are we asking this question of ourselves in 2019? Why is anyone in a position of power or trust, you in the media, still treating this as though we don't already know the answer? But I think, to your point, that has to extend to everything. We have to call these things out for what they are and speak very clearly. Doesn't mean you have to use a four-letter word. But the old language and rhetoric and conventions just isn't working, obviously, and has helped to produce the situation that we're in now.
So I want to talk about that as it relates to healthcare. You know, Mayor Pete called your position on guns a shiny object. You took great offense at that. Yet at the same time, I think for a lot of Democrats looking at this race, there are some candidates who have said we should be for Medicare for all, even if it's not as popular as a public option, even if it's maybe politically more difficult, because ultimately that's where we should be as a country. And you've taken a different position. You've said, I'm for an incredibly robust public option. I'm for getting everybody insured, but I'm not for a single payer system. Is Medicare for all a version of a shiny object?
No, and I don't think we should ever be governed or limited by what the political practicalities are or what the polling says or what the pundits have allowed us to talk about. And I think, you know, if we go to the author of Medicare for All, Bernie Sanders, he deserves so much of the credit for the fact that it is now conventional wisdom that we should get to universal health care, that it should be guaranteed, that it should be of high quality. There's just a disagreement now amongst us about the best path that we should take in pursuing that. And for me, that involves ensuring that everyone who's uncovered today is able to enroll in Medicare tomorrow, that those who are insufficiently covered, so you can't afford your copay or your premium, and you're literally afraid to go to the doctor, though you pay for it every month, you can enroll in Medicare. But those tens of millions of our fellow Americans who have health insurance that they like, that works for them. The members of unions who fought and negotiated for those plans and want to keep them, they should be able to do that. And so our plan gets to those same goals that Bernie deserves so much credit for defining for America, but I think in a much better, far more effective way.
So, I mean, something that, President Obama has said, I think some advocates for public option have said over the years is, if I were designing a system from scratch, I would go with single payer, but the transition is so difficult. That's why I support this incremental approach. And I don't say incremental as a disparaging thing, like this is the best route to getting everybody covered. Do you agree with that, or do you actually believe a system where there is a public option and private insurance is better than a system in which everyone has the same Medicare?
Yes, it's the latter. So it's not a function of expediency or cost in my mind for the position that I've taken. It is just the best possible path to guarantee the highest quality of care for our fellow Americans. For example, in our plan, go see a primary care provider, no copay. Go to see a mental health care provider, no copay to do that. For women's reproductive care and the full spectrum of women's health care, no copay. No copay for life-saving medication. So that's very bold, it's very robust, but it also trusts the decisions that millions of Americans have made or are likely to make to keep the insurance that they have, that they've negotiated for. And I keep mentioning unions because it is so compelling to listen to people who say, look, I have been on the lines fighting for this plan. And I pursued this plan in lieu of a pay increase or some other earned benefit, and I want to keep it. I don't want to fucking go to Medicare. That's not what I fought for. And so it's hard to hear that and not be compelled by that and want to honor that. And I think there's a way in our plan to do that. So that's why we're pursuing that, not out of any other reason, polling expediency or cost. It's just the best path.
So, we've had a lot of debates about healthcare, a lot of debates about immigration. There actually hasn't been that much conversation in the big Democratic debates around the economy. And I know that's something that you've been talking about more. So what does fuck it on the economy look like?
So last week, I'm in Las Vegas and we're having a town hall meeting and we get asked.
Just put $2 trillion on black and just roll our fucking fingers.
Probably makes as much sense as what the president is doing right now. And we have this amazing town hall and this woman approaches me afterwards and her question really stunned me. It was a kind of a what the fuck moment where she said, why is it illegal for me to live in my car? That was her question for me. And I said, well, tell me what you're talking about. And she said, I'm caring for my daughter who's significantly disabled, requires almost around-the-clock care. I'm working for DoorDash, Uber Eats, one other job, and then I'm hired by an outside healthcare company to care for my daughter because I cannot be paid to directly do that. And I don't have enough to pay the rent, and so we're living in our car, but it's illegal in Las Vegas, and so I get harassed by the police. She didn't ask me, can I just work one job and that be enough? Or can I get health care for my daughter? Or can you do something about housing in America when we're 6 million housing units short? She just wanted the very basic dignity of being able to live in her car. And that was wow. We are really in trouble when it's been normalized for the people who are bearing the brunt of this to lead these kind of lives when they should be, all of us should be demanding that she's be able to work a job that pays a living wage, $15 an hour and no less. Certainly we want much more than that. That she have paid family leave when she needs to take care of her daughter without fear of losing that job or the income that comes along with it. Universal health care, housing, so that it's not something that she has to worry about today. And in the wealthiest, the most powerful country on the face of the planet, she doesn't have to face this kind of indignity on a daily basis. There are millions of our fellow Americans who are literally a paycheck or an accident or being fired from their job away from living in their cars or being on the streets or not able to take care of their kids. And functionally, practically, we're all to blame. We've accepted it. We've become inured to this, normalized this kind of poverty in the wealthiest country on the planet. And so I think that for me, among many other moments, really helped to bring into focus just what we're doing to each other and that we don't have to do that. There are solutions to these challenges and we just have to decide that they're a priority for us as a country.
So there was a study that just came out that found for the first time billionaires paid a lower tax rate than the bottom 20%. And there's as part of this, there was a look at the share of income going to the top 1% and the share going to the bottom 50%. And in Europe, it's sort of held steady, right? 20s and 20s roughly. But in the United States, we've seen the share of income to the top 1% skyrocketing and the share of income going to the bottom dropping. Now, I think a lot of the Democrats talk about the tax solution to this, to reorganize our tax code so that rich people pay more, the middle class and poor people face less of a burden. That is I think a consensus on the Democratic side and amongst Americans. But that is an answer to a question about power, about why so much capital and power is accruing to the hands of the few. What do you see as the kind of upriver cause of that kind of economic inequality? Why is it that our economy is structured so that so much wealth naturally flows up?
I'm sure you read the 1619 Project in the New York Times. Makes this really compelling case that you start or chart the history of this country, not from the 4th of July, 1776, but the 20th of August, 1619, the first time someone's kidnapped in West Africa, brought here by force, and upon their backs, the wealth, the greatness, the success, the riches of this country are built, and how 2019, 400 years later, their descendants still are not fully able to participate in the success that they've created economically, politically, in any way that matters or counts in America. Another conclusion that you get from reading that is that it helps to explain a particularly brutal form of capitalism that, to your point, is not seen in most other parts of the capitalist or developed world. So I think the roots of our capitalism help to explain a lot. The myth that we tell ourselves that, it's brutal in America, and certainly there are people living in their cars like this woman that I just described, but ultimately you're going to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And this is a hard-charging country that rewards, pluck and hard work, and just keep living in that car, working those 4 jobs, and you're going to get there sooner or later. And I say that because I don't just want to blame those who sit on corporate boards or CEOs who are paid extravagant, unbelievable, insane salaries, or those who paid for access and influence and outcomes in the halls of power. All of them share some culpability, but it's almost defining as a myth for America that this is okay. So if that is the foundational endemic challenge that we face, what institutions can be the bulwark or allow people to transcend this? I was on a picket line just outside of Cincinnati with some UAW workers outside of a GM supplier plant. Later would be in Lordstown that same day with other UAW workers. And this young guy, your age, he says, I'm on
Beto.
this. Yes. He says, I'm on this picket line, not so much for myself or for other UAW members or even those who work at GM. He said, I'm here for the middle class. And that's a very confident statement. I said, well, tell me what you're talking about. And he said, if we fail in this, and these forces that you just described that have produced the wealth and income inequality that we're seeing in America, they win. And any chance of growing or even holding on to a place in the middle class is over forever. So making sure that we elevate the role of unions as a counterweight to that greed and corporate power that we see in America today, not just for members of unions, but for everyone else who wants to have a chance to make it, who right now takes for granted what unions have won in the past and maybe does not yet see what unions still have to win for us going forward. That's one institution that I think we need to strengthen. The other, very obviously, is our democracy in a pay-to-play system, in a system that locks out millions based on prior convictions in a very racist criminal justice system, in a system that purges voter rolls in Georgia, where Stacey Abrams is the governor of that state, if hundreds of thousands had not been denied the right to vote, or in Texas, where you have the most racially gerrymandered state in the union today. If you could bring the power in of everyone who's been denied access to the ballot box, our government, our institutions, our laws, and I think our capitalism would reflect the diversity of experience and aspiration and genius of this country. So those are some thoughts about the causes. Those are some thoughts about how we work our way through that, in addition to the policies that I propose, which may not be all that materially different from any other candidate. $15 an hour wage, universal health care, paid family leave, paid child care, a tax code that resets the balance. We need to do all of that. But to your point, I think we need to look at the structures within which we're operating and how they came to exist in the first place.
Do you think that in a system like that if we were, let's say we were to have power and we get a $15 minimum wage and we get a healthcare system in which everybody is automatically enrolled in a plan and we make college more affordable, if we are able to make these big changes, we're still left, I think, with a country where we have some consolidation, some very big corporations. We see, you now go to downtowns and you see kind of the local places are disappearing and the big companies have come in. Do you think that is an American economy where people will feel like they have a sense of dignity, they have a sense of control in their lives, or is something so fundamentally broken that we have to go beyond these social safety net policies and attack some of the deeper sort of corporate structures in the economy now?
Yes, we do. And it's interesting. I was in Northeast Texas, so now a very red Republican part of the country. Up until 40 years ago, a very reliably blue Democratic part of the country. And to help explain that transition, someone talked about Wright Patman, who was a member of Congress for that area. And they talked about him in answer to this question. They said he was a guy standing up for the little gal and the little guy, the mom and pop shop on the corner, trying to keep out the Walmarts of the day. Walmart did not exist at that time, but there were other predatory mega stores who were coming in and threatening to put people out of business. He was standing up for the farmer and the rancher and the grower and the producer against consolidation because he knew as soon as that happened, not only would it put them out of business, but these little towns would begin to dry up. And true enough, they have, and they're fighting to keep on, to hold on to the talent, to the young people, to draw them back again. And it's going to be impossible if they're up against these corporate behemoths right now. So leveling the playing field, making sure that entrepreneurship is possible for everyone in America and possible today. One interesting fact that helps to describe this, post-World War II, returning GIs, about 50% of them created a small business. Post 9/11, returning service members have created businesses at 4 to 5%. So that dream of being able to start something, having the capital, and really the possibility of even competing against some of the other established businesses is really fading from view. And that engine of our capitalism, that the small business owner is being compromised. And at the end of the day, that will compromise this country and an economic democracy that we used to be really proud of, that people like Wright Patman used to fight for. And into that story was a person said, that's why I stopped voting for Democrats. People stopped showing up for us, fighting for us. And so I figured, if you're not going to do that for me, and if you've got an economic populism coming from the other side and a Ronald Reagan who says he believes in the small business owner, I'm going to take a chance on that. So I think not only is it the right thing to do to stand up for those small business owners and future small business owners, I think it's very politically rewarding at the end of the day as well.
All right. Well, Beto, thank you for being here. You've also agreed to stick around for Queen for a Day.
Absolutely.
All right. So when we come back, Queen for a Day.
Don't go anywhere. This is Love It or Leave It, and there's more on the way.
Love it. And we're back. For decades, Grover Norquist, a man who looks and lives exactly like his name is Grover Norquist, has asked Republican candidates for office to sign his pledge committing them to his core values. No new taxes, no elimination of tax deductions, no horseplay after 9 p.m. And since I consider myself the Grover Norquist of people who hated Joker, I figured I'd start my own pledge. During this primary, we're pinning presidential candidates down on the issues that matter to me most in a segment we call Queen for a Day. Congressman O'Rourke has agreed to be the 7th candidate to face the gauntlet. Are you ready, Congressman?
Listo.
Okay. I'm just context clues. That must mean ready. On day one, do you pledge to eliminate daylight savings and never let the American people see dark before 5 p.m. again?
Yes.
Is Trump's Nickelback tweet alone an impeachable offense?
Should be.
Do I have to feel bad as a pedestrian at the intersection for hitting the crosswalk button when someone is clearly already waiting to cross, or is it okay to have a healthy skepticism that maybe they didn't hit the button?
I think it's okay to have that healthy skepticism. Hit the button.
Do you have to make a kind of little face, like to the person?
I think some acknowledgement would be good. Yeah.
No, I think
civilized.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Would you pardon your former bandmate if their only crime was selling out?
There's no danger of that, but yes, I would.
Okay.
Yeah.
You must now put to rest an important debate. What is the best food at the Sad restaurant inside IKEA?
I'm not familiar with this restaurant. What are the options that I have?
Well, it's really Swedish meatballs, lingonberry sauce. That's really what they offer.
I'll do the meatballs.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I'll do the meatballs.
that's
Is that
not
the right
correct.
answer?
No, I'm sorry. If a couple plans their wedding in the week between Christmas and New Year's, hasn't that couple proven themselves too unstable and dangerous to purchase a firearm?
Correct.
Far- Foreign policy hypothetical. If you found out Emmanuel Macron's car had a baby on board decal on the back, would it make you respect him less? Shouldn't we drive like every car has a baby on board?
Yes.
We shouldn't be more like, oh, I was going to hit you.
That's right,
Until
yes.
I found out that there was a baby.
Absolutely. Yes.
Congressman, this is a doozy. All
Okay.
right, just
I'm ready. I'm stealing myself.
Tex-Mex, Texas barbecue. You can only have one for the rest of your life. Which is it?
Barbecue, which may be counterintuitive because I come from El Paso, but in El Paso, we take pride in Mexican food as distinct from Tex-Mex. So if you were to ask me Mexican food or Texas barbecue, it would be Mexican food. Sorry if I confused it, but just want to make sure the record's clear.
I just think, honestly, one of the challenges we have is like that kind of nuance. Like, how do you get it through in this media environment? Because all I heard is you shit on Tex-Mex. Under oath, can you ollie?
No. Sorry, damn it.
As a former teen hacker, were you white hat or black hat?
I was white hat.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
For legal reasons and also for, just in the interests of honesty.
Okay.
White hat,
Well, it's glad those align. So lately, a lot of times in the news, they do not. Last month, and this is true, the U.S. government was forced to confirm that they were in possession of multiple videos of UFOs taken by Navy pilots after the videos were made public by former Blink-182 singer Tom DeLonge. As president, will you finally give the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Tom for opening our eyes and for Blink-182 actually secretly being good?
There will be some way to reward that. I don't know if it'll be in the way that you described, but I point taken. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
At least you're open to it?
Yeah.
Should we preemptively lock up anyone who calls the Joker movie a masterpiece for safety?
I want to pander to you by saying yes, but I haven't seen the movie yet.
It's 2019. You can review movies without having seen them.
Okay. Yeah, let me see it. Let
Okay,
me see it.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you.
Final question. If you are elected president, will your punk band Foss reunite to play the inauguration?
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be a ton of fun. And, all of them have gone on to much more successful musical careers. Cedric in At the Drive-In and Mars Volta, Arlo in this group called Fragile Gang that's here in Los Angeles, Mike in the Honky Tonk Chateau in Springfield, Missouri.
These names are terrific.
Yeah. So, to be able to connect with them again and be able to share in that dream that was lost to me when I realized I was nowhere half as talented as the three of them. Sure, if I have to use a presidential inauguration to have that chance again, I will use it. So, yes.
So one last question. You're running for president. I think there's a lot of people that have listened to this show, Pod Save America. They've been following you for a long time. In fact, we get shit constantly for people claiming we're in your pocket when we're not. We criticize you like crazy.
Listen to these questions you just asked me.
But for people listening that I think are wondering about you in this campaign and whether or not you deserve a second look, what is your message to them as they're kind of in the home stretch of making this decision?
I think at a time that we have a president who seeks to drive this country through fear of Muslims, fear of transgender Americans, fear of Mexican immigrants, fear of anyone, in other words, who doesn't look like or pray like or love like the rest of America. At a time that there are so many people who legitimately live in fear. If you are a child of immigrants and your father's dropped you off at school and you don't know if he's going to be able to pick you up because he himself may be picked up and detained and deported. If you're a child going to school and you recognize that this country has done shit in the decades of mass shootings in America, that 40,000 people lose their lives every year, and you live in fear that you may be next, that it's not a question of if, but when that is going to happen in your school. if you know that this country, that the world knows everything about climate change today in 2019 that we knew in 1979 and haven't taken any action, and you are afraid that the 10 years left to us will be squandered, I want to make sure that I am fearless for you, fearless against this president, operating on our ambitions, our aspirations, a belief in America that can come together despite our differences, not allow them to divide us as we seek to be a match for this moment. And that's the way that I've been in this campaign, talking about gun violence, talking about institutional racism, talking about climate, the economy, healthcare, about rewriting our immigration laws in our own image. It's going to take that kind of fearlessness to defeat Donald Trump in November 2020, and it's going to take that kind of fearlessness to meet the greatest set of challenges that this country has ever faced. And so this is a campaign for the fearless of America. And we want to bring everyone in, regardless of the differences that might otherwise divide us. No me importa who you voted for, who you pray to, who you love, how many generations you've been here. You're an American first before you are anything else, and that's all that counts at this moment. So that's why I'm running, that's how I'm running, and that's how I want to serve this country as President of the United States.
Beto O'Rourke, thank you for being here.
Thank you all. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Gracias.